Hi, everybody. Looks like we're live. We'll just wait for a few people to jump on here with us. And if you're watching the replay, then thanks for being here. And we're sorry that we missed you live. If you're here with us live, that's fantastic. You can wave or leave us a comment, say hi, let us know that you're here. That'd be awesome. Tonight we're going to talk about spring hoof care tips. If you have not been here with us before, then we are here every Tuesday at 7:30 answering questions that are sent in by you guys. My name is Lindsay and this is Jess. And if you are interested in catching the replay and finding out more about things that we have going on at the farm, like clinics or our online tax shop or our online coaching program, you can find out about all of that at our website, which is hayescofeldperformancehorses.com. You can also get onto our email list, and if you're on our email list, then you will get the replay of this live delivered right to your inbox every week on Tuesday morning, as well as an opportunity to submit any questions that you have about the topic or further topics. We'd be happy to get to know you that way. If you would like to submit a question or a topic for a future live, then you can do that by just sending me an email. You can send me a message on Facebook, or you can send me an email at hayescofeldph@gmail.com. We'd love to see what your questions are and try to get those answered for you in a live format like this. There's a chance that we've already done a live, and I might be able to find the information for you so that you can watch that. And if you're struggling with the connection, you can try refreshing your screen. If we get kind of held up here, then we'll just let you know. We'll try to get back on. But knock on wood, our connection has been pretty good the last little while. Okay, it looks like a few people are on. Hi, Carrie. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Kim in Florida. How nice for you. I just put my coveralls back on because I'm freezing. So I hope you're enjoying the weather in Florida. Okay, so this question was sent in by Kathy, and Kathy had a number of questions kind of related to this. There were a few responses to the email that went out this morning, so we'll try to make sure we cover all of your questions. If you have questions as we go along, drop them in the comments. We'll try to get to as many as we can. So I guess before we even get started into the specific questions, do you have any tips for spring hoof care? Things people should do or not do or be aware of? I mean, it snowed yesterday. We had whiteouts yesterday, but birds were chirping this morning. I feel like spring is happening, right? Horses are shedding. Foals are being born. It's spring, right?
Yeah, you talked yourself into that.
Yeah.
Didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing from my point of view right now is everybody wants to start riding their horses. You know, everybody's kind of if you haven't been indoors and you haven't been motivated, a lot of people are just starting to get motivated. A couple of things that always concern me is, they want to ride their horses and they want to leave them, let's say, barefoot for a little while. They want to keep kicking them back in and out into the mud. Both those things are kind of hard on horses' feet. They've went from being outside and in the hay a little bit and all that, or in the mud a little bit, and then everybody wants to bring them in and ride them hard. First things first, if your horse needs shoes, I feel like you're better to get them on right away. Don't try to ride them and get 6 weeks and then call your farrier and say, well, we had shoes on last time, let's put them back on. If they need shoes, be proactive, put the shoes on them. Take care of them before there is a problem. Keeping them out of the mud as much as possible. By nature, horses are a creature that's supposed to travel around quite a bit, not sit in one spot in the mud. And a lot of pens, everybody calls them like salvage paddocks and that kind of stuff. A lot of people will have a lot more stone and abrasive materials as ground in there to keep it drier. and they leave their horses in that and this, and then wonder why their horse comes up with, some abscesses, some bruising, some different things. And I think,
Or why they've been fine all winter, and then when they go to ride them, why are they sore?
yeah, like you can't have a horse living in that and then expect them to come in and ride and then kick them back out into that. It's too hard on them. Be nice to these things. From the farrier's point of view, don't leave them in those salvage paddocks, and then when we go to show up to shoe them, bring them in and wash them off. Have them dry. Have them dry for your farriers. Have them dry for the horses too. So if you bring one in, let's say, to ride them, and they have to come in out of mud. I mean, we have lesson horses that are in the mud. We have horses that are out there. Bring them in, clean them off the second they get into that barn. And I think one that, and we don't do it all the time, I'll admit to that. Take a hoof pick and then take a towel. Wonderfully for getting them dry right away. I guess there's my tips for. What about you? What do you do?
I don't do a lot.
You don't care if it's muddy for your farrier,
well,
do you?
I don't care. No, I shouldn't say that.
The truth come out.
A lot of times my horses are saddled for me. I'm not doing a lot of that stuff at the moment. But what I will say that I think is really important at this time of year is to make sure that, and this isn't so much a hoof care thing, which is what Kathy's question was about, but making sure that horses that are out in the mud, I think it's best for them to be living as much as possible. But this time of year, they're going to be standing in mud, and I think it's really important to not forget that you want to kind of take a really soft curry comb or something and just kind of comb through that softly and get it all out, or get as much of it as you can out, so that that skin gets a chance to breathe, because this is also a really common time for horses to get scratches and stuff, or also to have had some kind of wound and is covered in mud and we don't see it because of the mud. I think it's really important that we don't forget to go all the way over our whole horse, all the way down to their feet with our grooming equipment, get all that old hair out and everything. Okay, to Kathy's questions about feet. Should I be applying iodine or?
Well, I feel like if you have a soft-footed horse, always is a good time until you get into the middle of summer. Hopefully been doing it all winter. If they're soft-footed, then yes. There's iodine, turpentine. There's a few products.
Should I be adding moisture? Should I be adding moisture? And then her questions about hoof oil were, should I use it or not? There seems to be conflicting information about using hoof oil.
Most of the conflicting information comes from the people selling hoof oil. They say you should always put it on. This time of the year, you're not trying to moisturize. You're really trying to protect what's in there. Deal where, a little bit of oil isn't bad for them. But I think the outside horses, bring them in, clean them off right away, wipe them down with a towel, get some iodine on there, get some turpentine, all that stuff that is going to harden up them soft-footed horses. And usually that's what happens this time of year. They're in so much moisture 24 hours a day. The ground is always just a little bit wetter. Even let's say they're in a run-in with a little bit of elevation and it's somewhat dry. The ground is still moist, and it's going to cause that foot to be wetter. So you need to dry that off as best you can. I'm a big believer in the iodine and the turpentine. I think they both have great qualities for horses that are outside, as far as cleaning out, especially in beside those frogs where you're going to get some thrush, and just having a better quality of that sole where you're going to
Processing from bruising, right?
But most horses, if you just grab your hand and really push on there, they'll tell you where they're a little sore, and then obviously the heat part is a great indication.
Okay, and then sugar and the role of sugar in an abscess.
Sugar as in to harden their feet up, or sugar as in their diet?
No, sugar's in their diet. So that's kind of leading into the next question, which is about metabolic syndrome. But this question off the grass.
Muzzle them. I tell lots of people, you know, if you want to turn your horses out. Let's say you have four horses, you don't want to leave one in the barn. You know, buy a muzzle.
Yeah,
Your
there's
horse
some
will
good
go
grazing
outside.
muzzles now. Yeah.
And do not mess around with it. You know, oh, he doesn't like the muzzle, don't care. You know, well, I hear it all the time, right? My horse doesn't like the muzzle. My horse, you know, well, he doesn't like this. You figure out how to keep it on their heads, whether it involves putting an extra strap on the back into the halter, whatever, but do not mess around with it. Because the more they get sore from it, the easier it is to keep happening, and it just goes downhill from there. Don't mess around with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Him being unpleasant about putting it on is smaller potatoes when you think about all the implications of laminitis. Yeah.
And don't also forget, too, that it's not just in the spring. A lot of horses in the fall, kind of that late October, they'll get them big rains, you know, going into fall, and that pasture will kind of spike up and jump up again, and a lot of horses will have trouble with them, too. You know, it's after rains, anything where there's big regrowth real quick.
Yeah.
You know, that, and I don't know the grasses out on the West Coast. You know, that's out of my knowledge, but I know in southwestern Ontario, when we have a big rain, you know, we're such a fertile ground over here that you can just about see it come up. And I think for a horse that has tender feet, I personally, you know, especially the show horses, if we have one that's real tender, is that mixture of betadine and sugar. You make like a paste and put that on there and wrap it. You know, those work really well. You know, so take sugar out of their diet.
Riding the horses on the sand, like, you know, getting the horses into the sand and riding them in the sand is so good for them. People forget how good it is for the horses, how good it is for their feet to get that sand in there to dry everything up, and just a little bit abrasive and
the motion, because
and
I think a lot of horses haven't been, they're outside in the winter, but they're not moving. They're not, you know, if you put a step counter on them, they're not doing like
they're just at the hay feeder. Yeah.
So their body isn't as healthy. It's not pounding that blood around. It's not healing itself every day. He's healthy. But is he moving? Is he getting around? Is he doing something? Just because they're outside, you know, that doesn't mean he's moving. I mean, especially when it freezes up like it did here 2 nights ago. It went from really muddy, everything was kind of moving, you know, some mares were running out in the field. Then it freezes up, well, it's hard on their feet. You know, they kind of tiptoe around because now they're walking on all the mud.
Like divots and stuff. Yeah.
And then, you know, they're a little sore, so they don't move as much. They literally just go from the hay bale feeder to the water trough, you know, back to the hay bale feeder, maybe over to the running shelter, but they're not running like they are, so their feet aren't healing themselves and that blood's not flowing. And I think that's a big thing this time of the year, is get them in, you know, and get them moving around.
Okay, it looks like we are having a little bit of trouble with our connection tonight, so I guess I jinxed us. If you have any questions, you can let us know here in the comments and we'll try to get to those. But if you want to leave them afterwards, or if you end up watching the replay, you can leave them afterwards and we'll try to come back and make sure we get to those. I think that covers those questions. Anything else that you wanted to say about spring? I think getting the shoes on, for me, when I see people want to put the horse's shoes on or come for a lesson, or they just got the horse's shoes on and they want to, it's like they need a little bit of time to adjust. You can't do everything all at once. You can't have the shoes put on Thursday and then go ride Friday, Saturday, Sunday all weekend. And, you know.
And that's not a foot problem. That's just a general health problem.
Yeah.
You know, give them some time. And it's tough this time of year because, you know, you get a new set of shoes put on and then you're looking at them putting them out in the mud and you're thinking, well, there's a waste of money.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a tough gig, but.
Or you get a beautiful day and you feel bad keeping them inside. Yeah.
No, I think the biggest thing is just think ahead, because I think for a lot of people, what they do in April 1st this year, they did in April 1st last year, and when they look back, they did the same thing. Like I've heard so many people, my horse abscesses every spring. Well, then change something. You need to investigate it more and not hope. And I think you need to be ahead of it and say, okay, my horse does abscess every spring or becomes sore. So what do I need to do? Does it need shoes with pads on it? You know, maybe for one shoe job. Well, the ground is getting unthawed and thawed and unthawed and thawed. You know, and pads aren't so bad nowadays. Like, I can remember when I was a kid, everything was silicone. You just put silicone on. And that was pretty hard on horses' feet. Now with all the product, in a couple months, you're going to have a hole somewhere. You're going to have a hunk coming out of it. And then nobody likes that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that happens is people get kind of discouraged when the weather all of a sudden turns nice and then their horse isn't perfectly sound, so then they're trying to deal with an abscess, and then by the time that kind of works itself out, they're behind the 8 ball getting into show season or like the good weather, and then they don't do as much riding. They get kind of beating themselves up and they just don't do as much riding, and I think that extra care in the spring goes a long way for making the most, you know, for us where we have a relatively short season of being outside and having good weather. Most people don't ride, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people don't ride all the way through the winter and, you know, January and stuff. So doing a little bit of extra care in especially the early spring can make a big difference in the amount of time that you actually get riding your horse and quality time that you get riding your horse where it's good and sound. Okay, I hope that answered your questions. If you have more questions, you can leave them in the comments. We'll try to get to them. Sorry about the connection tonight, you guys. Thanks for being here with us. We do have some exciting things coming up. We have clinics that just went live. We had 2 more clinics that just went live today. If you're on our email list, then you would have got an invitation to our ranch riding clinic and our ranch trail clinic. We're doing a ranch trail clinic for the first time this year. They are June 25th and 26th, I believe. It's on our shop. So if you go to our website, you go to hayescofelperformancehorses.com, and in the menu at the top, you hit tack shop. In there is a collection for all of our clinics. And if there's any space left in those, then you can jump into there. We'd love to see you for those. We also have a reining clinic. I believe there's 1 spot left in the reining clinic, and I think I have 1 or 2 spots left in the May 8th equitation clinic. So we have all of those going on. We also have our Cut the Chaos Challenge coming up. First week of April, we'll be diving into setting some intentions for the second quarter of 2022, probably the most important one to kind of plan our goals for, or at least be intentional about, because this is the one that is leading right into show season and leading right into the good weather riding. Oh, Kathy, I see your watch. Then you can shoot me a message and I can get you in that way. I will post all of that stuff as the week continues, and then we'll dive into that next week, and I will see you, I'll see you every day next week, I guess. Okay, have a good night tonight, you guys. Thanks for being here with us, and if you have more questions that you'd like to submit, you can send them to hayescofelph@gmail.com.
Have a good night.